Monster Hunter is a game franchise I am severely in love with. I absolutely adore everything about the games, and I cannot stop playing them. And granted, I've only played about 3 of the games and have really played 2 of them, those being the newer installments, World and Rise. But I still absolutely love the series, even from what I've seen and slightly played of the older games. Listening to my friends who've played the games for much longer and listening to the community who's been playing the games since the start, Monster Hunter seems to be one of the most consistent game franchises I have ever seen. It is a game franchise that has started in the PS2 era and has made it all the way to the modern era of gaming without any major breaks, where they released on 2 games on the PS2, PS3 and then fell off the face of the earth and then randomly came back. No, Monster Hunter has dozens of games spanning across several different consoles with several spin-offs and such. A lot of those spin-offs just being a lot more of what is the main game, but on a smaller scale for mobile consoles. Monster Hunter is the most frequent and consistent game franchises. You have your detractors of quality, but still are considered good to an extent. And that got me thinking, what makes Monster Hunter so consistent? What do they keep in every game that keeps every player coming back? You could make the argument that it is the very aesthetic or theme of the game. You are going up against insurmountable odds with a big stick, slaying dragons as a measle human. But Monster Hunter has a very comedic style to it. It doesn't take itself very seriously. You fight with cats who cook you food, and you've got very energetic personality and animations. It is a game that doesn't take itself extremely seriously, despite the very dire situation it puts you in. Or you could say it is the art style of the game being very consistent throughout, despite having very significant changes, especially with graphic styles and graphics quality. Monster Hunter still has a very similar style throughout all its games, especially in the monster designs, being that kind of between looking like a real-life animal or what could be a realistic-looking creature, and that fantasy-esque looking creature, like a big monkey that looks like a monkey, but it's got a tail for a hand and throws fruit at you. Or the Nargacuga, which looks like a panther or a cougar almost, but has wings slightly and a tail that shoots spikes at you. Monster Hunter's been able to find that in between. But I think what keeps players coming back every game, is Monster Hunter's gameplay. That's a kind of obvious one if you've played Monster Hunter. Even if you haven't, gameplay is king in gaming. It's kind of hard to play a video game without being able to play that game. But Monster Hunter's gameplay style, you will hear from old veterans to even new players who've tried it once. Monster Hunter's gameplay is very unique. A lot of people compare it to Dark Souls, and I can kind of see why. It is a game that requires you to be a bit slower with how you approach combat. But as somebody who's played Dark Souls before Monster Hunter, I don't think that's a very good comparison. It has its similarities where your dodge roll can basically roll out of any attack, but I would say Monster Hunter is much more similar to something like a fighting game. Monster Hunter is a game that more thrives off of combos. It doesn't give you much up front. You're really only using 3 buttons to attack. The top face button, right face button, and right trigger. If you want computer controls, no, you're cringe. But Monster Hunter is a game where you really only get 3 to 4 attacks, but your roster has 10, because those are your 3 attacks you can do to start, but a lot of the weapons thrive off of combos and mechanics. I would say a fighting game is much more similar to Monster Hunter's gameplay. It's much more awkward, but once you get to grasp the mechanics and know it, it's much quicker and much more understandable. It thrives in its combo system and hidden mechanics. A lot of people will say Monster Hunter looks kind of slow and feels kind of slow, and to start, maybe, But once you really get into the games and try to understand your weapon, one of the 14 weapons, Monster Hunter becomes very quick. Because once you're in a hunt, you're not only thinking of your weapon and whatever gimmick your weapon has. Let's say longsword. You're worrying about your spirit gauge. You're worrying about your sharpness. You're trying to predict what the monster's next attack is going to be based on their movements. You're trying to figure out your environment, looking around for any endemic life forms you can use to your advantage or where you can hide from the monster's attack. You're trying to think of your own ailments or the buffs you've put on with a demon drug or an armor skin. You're worrying about so much that when you're in the hunt, despite somebody new coming in saying it might feel slow, once you get into the game, it's a game that keeps you very engaged, which is why I think Monster Hunter gameplay is king. Granted, there are faults with Monster Hunter. I'm gonna kind of clickbait the title, you know, Monster Hunter gameplay is perfect or king or whatever. And I think it is. I think Monster Hunter stands up there with one of the best combat and gameplay mechanics in all of video gaming. There are issues with it, but I think Monster Hunter thrives because it has got a gameplay style that keeps you engaged. A game that keeps you engaged is a good game because a person that's engaged with the game is going to be thinking about the game. That's kind of game design 101. You want to keep the player engaged. Monster Hunter thrives off of this engagement because each weapon is very unique in its style. And Monster Hunter has a lot of mechanics you can worry about. You've got different attacking types. You've got different, damage types. You've got bludgeoning and slashing. Slashing is really good for severing tails and stuff, while bludgeoning is really good for breaking parts of the monster and stunning them. Each weapon has a unique moveset, some focusing on combos more than others. It is a game that consistently throughout its series, despite having many gimmicks come and go and movesets change, is a gameplay style that has remained consistent throughout the series. If Monster Hunter were to change its gameplay, not even change it to something bad, but if it were to majorly change the core gameplay, it wouldn't feel like a Monster Hunter game. Monster Hunter also is really good in its gameplay where each weapon is very unique and usable. Even something like the Insect Glaive, which its main purpose, mounting monsters, has been almost completely removed in Rise, it is still a very viable weapon to use because it keeps you mobile and it still has high damage numbers. Each weapon is usable and there is no odd one out that's practically unusable. Each of these weapons incentivizes a completely different gameplay style. And I think that is what makes Monster Hunter's gameplay unique and very special. And that gameplay being extremely consistent despite major changes being made to something like the Hunting Horn makes it still very similar throughout the games. Also, Monster Hunter's gimmicks. Each game has a unique combat gimmick. With Generations Ultimate, you had fighting styles. With Monster Hunter World and Iceborne, you had the Clutch Claw and the Slinger. With Monster Hunter Rise, you've got the Wire Bugs. Each of these mechanics adding new attacks unique to that weapon. I think Monster Hunter is a game that, despite not teaching you how to play it a lot, you will have to usually look up YouTube tutorials. Once you get into it, is very rewarding. Monster Hunter focuses on interactivity. It keeps you active and interactive with the game, and it is a game that rewards you for doing so. Anyway, that's about all I gotta say. I feel like I've been slowly moving away from the camera during this. But this is now my third Monster Hunter video. I am not addicted. Someone send help.